is it time to sort of make a rebet on Rome Odunze at that value, given the fact that, we're likely to see DJ Moore out of town? It's probably going to be the three-headed monster, Loveland, Odunze, and Burden, which is going to be super exciting and probably very efficient, or prolific, I should say, in 2026.
Redraft ends, but Dynasty is life. I'm Theo Gremminger, joined today by Scott Bullinger, a.k.a. Jax Falcone. We're going to talk about how to maximize your Dynasty rookie draft pick trades. We're going to talk about the 2026 rookie class and how to trade rookie picks and maximize their value. A lot of fun doing it this time of year. Scott, a lot of times we get into this like later into like the time around the NFL draft, but I love doing it early this year. This is a polarizing rookie class that we're going to be talking about today. Before we dive into the actual value of the rookie picks, what are your general thoughts on this 2026 class?
I mean, it's not good, right? I think every year I try to scramble and find the elite players, and I think there's some elite players, but not as many elite players, and then the depth feels a little bit flat after a certain point, and I think we're going to get there. So I think in general, I think that there are fewer first-round rookie pick talents in this draft than typically.
Yeah, I think that you're probably spot on with that one. And I'll say that I want to have a glass half full when it comes to rookie picks. I'm usually trying to be the optimist when we're looking at a class, saying, sometimes the market can be wrong. Do you think that there's an argument that with so many people like yourself saying that maybe there's value in attacking like the 106, 107 right now, with people trying to get rid of them? Is there any like optimistic take you can have on this class, or it's generally, hey, I'm very worried?
Well, I think there's always good players from most every class. I mean, there's been a few scuds over the years, not remembering the exact years, but the Bishop Sankey year, if you go back to that class, that was basically there's no good players from that class. But generally speaking, there's going to be some good players, and they come from spots that we don't expect. So I think we're going to get there a little bit, but I think I would probably say in general that trading 4 picks right now is better process than trading away picks at this time.
Yeah, I think that people always get into sort of the draft pick trade timing. I'll say generally over the years, when do you feel like you're getting your best value when you're a draft pick seller? And when do you feel like you're getting your best value when you're a draft pick buyer? There's the old adage that picks are always the most valuable when you're actually on the clock. Do you think that that's sort of antiquated thinking?
No, I think that's basically true. I think there are exceptions to that rule, but I would say that's more the rule than the exception, right? So I always say like the 207 in your when you're on the clock, the cool thing about the 207 when you're on the clock is that you may think it's, Harold Fannin or whatever, but someone else might want it to be Isaac Tesla or Shedeur Sanders or, right, a number of other players. And so all of the players remaining are now available with that pick, whether it's who you think it would be or not. And that fervor, when everybody's paying attention in the draft room, you also have the most customers. So I think absolutely people are tapped in. They want to make picks. They're addicted to making picks. I mean, making picks is fun. Let's not mince words. It's just straight up fun. So trading for a pick when it's on the clock and getting to make it immediately, there's value to that in and of itself, no matter who the player is.
Do you think that this is a class where we're going to talk about the top players in the class sort of naturally on this show, but are you also trying to trade up into the specific ranges? And I think right now it's pretty clearly a top 5 in Superflex, and then it's pretty clearly if you're a single QB dynasty manager, it's a top 4 right now. Are you doing like what you can to try to pivot into those tiers right now? Or do you think that that's something that could get fantasy managers in any kind of trouble down the line? Like, how safely insulated are those upper tiers without getting too into this specific player?
Yeah. Yeah, well, here's the thing is that I think everybody sees it coming though. It's like anything else. It's like I think we're going to talk Travis Hunter too.
Oh yeah.
People see that bomb coming. And so you really have to be careful, or not careful, you just have to be aware that someone might see that coming from a mile away and be like, "Yeah, no thanks, pal, beat it." You're going to get that DM back when you send a quote unquote fair trade offer in value terms for the 104, right? Moving from the 107 to the 104 and I don't know, giving up some commensurate value that makes sense. They're gonna be like, pass, get out of here, beat it. And you're gonna wonder why not. Well, the answer is that everybody sort of has this groupthink right now. But I don't, sometimes when there's groupthink, there's value in sort of bucking that trend. I'd be careful doing that too.
So, we might as well we're going to dive into the players a little bit more detail oriented. But when you're looking at specifically Jeremiah Love, Fernando Mendoza, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, and Carnell Tate, sort of the big five right now. Is there one of the five that you're like, I'm not sure they should be included with this five, or would you agree that the tier is correct?
I think it makes sense to me. It was my tier kind of going in, except maybe Mendoza was a question mark for me. He answered some questions down the line, down the stretch of the season. I thought he was gamey as hell. Took an undefeated team that had never even been there before. I mean, granted, yeah, you had a coach, yeah, you had a roster, but nobody was picking Indiana preseason. Nobody was picking Mendoza. It felt a little Joe Burrow-esque. Joe Burrow light, but Joe Burrow-esque in terms of, the two weapons, Surratt and Cooper, who will come up later, I promise you. And I think, yeah, he really showed me some things. And I said it on the show with the boys. I was like, or maybe it was with Pat, I don't remember. But on my show nonetheless, that he's kind of like, he's football like focused. He just can't stop. Like he mentioned the girlfriend thing. He's like, I don't want a girlfriend. I got to play. He's just a robot at this particular point. And I think that's what we're looking for. We want a guy that's the opposite of Jamarcus Russell, right? The guy that, is going to watch every bit of film and do everything. So he's really starting to grow on me. So yeah, I think he's included there. And Tyson's been this sort of amazing player. I mean, his injuries scare me a little bit, as well as some of his, again, his profile is great, but I think it may be a tick down from the other two wide receivers.
So let's take a step back. And I had this conversation with Scott Connor, who I know you respect as well. And it was always a great guest on Dynasty Life. But sort of everybody's got their price. And every single rookie class, it seems like we have this conversation. Even last year, where it's a class we were sort of very excited about, 2024, 2023, every year, there's the discussion of re-rolling your first-round pick, re-rolling your second-round pick. But when you look specifically at the 2026 class, with this very strong 2027 class are coming around the horn, and like without diving into the values of 2027 players, I think if you play Dynasty, you understand how valuable these 2027 picks are just by the trade activity in your league. Some of the trades you're seeing for people to get 2027 first, it's sky high, and it's going to stay sky high. What's your cutoff point? Are you a 106 for a random 2027 first guy, or are you trying to maybe find other ways to get there? Like, are you trying to hold on to those 106s? Basically, what's your cutoff point for a reroll?
Well, I think you got to be a little bit careful selling the 106 because there could be, I don't know, what Jonah Coleman, Jadarian Price go to some awesome spot in round 2. Next thing you know, he's pick 3 or 4 and gets kicked down. And these things happen, man. So the 106 could become the 104 or the 105 in our conversations parlance, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, why did I do that? I've seen that happen to me before, but I would just say that in general, the back half of the first round picks, and that you want to throw 106, 107 in there, sure, absolutely. I'd be a little bit more careful with those picks because, again, what I just mentioned. But all of those picks, I'm selling any and all of them for a random 27 first, yes, based on the class's strength.
Yeah, I think I'm there as well. It's getting more and more difficult, I think, with the information people are getting. Not everybody are sickos listening to podcasts like Dynasty Life or your show or Scott's show. Some people are sort of in the weeds and they're like, okay, what are my rookie picks actually worth here? But I think the more and more people start diving into it post Super Bowl, you might have a little bit more difficulty pulling off trades like the 108 for a 2027 first. I think that there's a little bit of value in just if you're trying to get rid of a pick, you don't want to even take a risk on this class, doing what you can to sort of pivot into it. Do you like doing creative ways like offering the 108 and like a 2027 third to go and get yourself a 2027 first?
Sure. That's fair. The other thing I would point out is that picks increase in value when they're on the clock. So, don't panic either. Don't feel like, oh, I got to get off this 107 or 108. I've got a number of late first round picks this year. And yeah, maybe I have to pick someone there. You know what I mean? It might be that I end up having to just select player, which I'm not going to be super excited to do, but it may happen. But I'm also willing to sort of be patient. And then when all of a sudden everybody is fallen madly in love with Denzel Boston, who got drafted to the, name the awesome team in the late first round that needs a wide receiver, and he's just so good. And we're talking about Denzel Boston. He may be better than Rome Odunze was as a prop. I can hear all the narratives coming along, and now all of a sudden you can sell it straight up for a 27 first, maybe a 27 first plus to a playoff team who thinks mine's going to be late anyway. I'm getting Denzel Boston. See what I'm saying? So Narrative Street is going to change these picks from what we're saying today to what we're saying tomorrow, and I would just hang tight.
Yeah, I think generally your advice to hang tight is the way to do it. I think that there's an argument that you have to know your league, and know the activity in your league. You know how sharp guys in your league are. And I'll say that the dynasty trade timing, you could talk to a number of experts. They're going to tell you very different things, but being able to extract that top value whenever you can get it done is the way to do it. So I think generally listen to Jax on that one, but still kick the tires if you're trying to get something done is absolutely the way to do it.
No, absolutely get something done if you can do it now that you like. Of course, I'm just saying don't feel pressured by saying, well, nobody wants it, so I have to do this instead, or I had to give up the 27 second to get the. You didn't have to do any of that shit, pal. Settle down,
100%. You've done so much great work over the years, and you have a new venture that you just started. Announcement was like last week.
Yeah. So on the clock fantasy, OTC, great tagline there, forever OTC. But me, Travis Seal, Joe Kuvatakis, the boys on Dynasty Underground, and Jay Wood, who we really can't do it without Jay. Us four basically kind of said, let's do this. And we had a lot of plans at the Undroppables. Unfortunately, certain things just weren't possible based off of the structure of where that was. So we decided, hey, let's do what we really want to do. And we did it. And so there was a lot of people at the Undroppables who saw that vision as well. So we've got a ton of awesome contributors in tow. Too many to name. I'll leave someone out, but we've just got a great team. OTC Dynasty basically is what it really is, because we are trying to be the best Dynasty resource on the market. We are Dynasty. We are player prospect, analysis, and that's what we're doing. So, there's going to be so much. Theo, I really mean this. This is so cool. Advanced trade calc, AI, basically. So there's going to be a way to get data through AI. Just ask it a question, and it's freaking awesome. Just a ton of cool things like that. But also, our models, the wide receiver model is, I really believe it's the best model in the business. Jay gets all the credit for it, but we're smart enough to hitch our wagon to him. We've got great wide receiver model that's proven to be great. We've had a behind the curtains quarterback model that's done really, really well, that we're going to just release this year and see how it does. And then go from there. And we do have a running back and tight end model that we might be able to get done by the end of this preseason, so to speak, this off season. But just a ton of great stuff. And of course the underground and the undrafted go along with us. So that's, in a nutshell, but I could talk for hours about it.
Yeah. And some people zone out when people start talking about models, but your model has actually had some really big hits. Why don't you, instead of saying we have a model, share a couple of the players that scored really highly in your model? Namely, Puka Nacua scored very highly in your model. Who's a couple of other wide receivers that were big hits for you guys?
Yeah, and Puka was like, Puka. So basically, there's like the '90s. If anybody in the '90s is like, it's like Jefferson, Lamb, Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Neighbors or something. It's really reserved for these elite prospects. Obviously, Marvin Harrison didn't really hit, but he scored in the '70s, which is where players like T. Higgins and there's a ton, Luther Burden, Tet McMillan, all these players landed in the '70s. '70s is a really strong score, and so when we saw sort of Puka there, this was like, wow, this thing's pretty cool. Tank Dell, it grabbed Tank Dell. JSN is basically a 9. I think he's 89.9 or something like that. So we were on JSN. The thing about a prospect model too is it helps us identify later breakouts. This is why we're all over JSN. We were not giving up on JSN. We were all in. We're like, no, this is a real dude. So some of that can actually lead you to sort of seeing a little bit later breakouts. So yeah, it's been really good, and we of course tested it back all the way through DJ Moore, that sort of class. So that's how we sort of have the data going back that far. But this would be its third year, sort of as a naked profile, just not knowing what the hell it's going to do. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and talking about a lot of times this time of year, we're talking about guys going into their second year, going into their third year. We've got a guy going into his second year that's one of the more difficult dynasty values to sort of unpack because of all the variables. And that's Travis Hunter. I know you've covered Travis Hunter sort of extensively on some recent episodes. I had a chance to talk to Scott Connor about him. Scott's sort of keeping a glass half full approach. Your thoughts on Travis Hunter, the dynasty asset? I mean, if we could go back in time 10 months ago compared to where we're at today with that value, really go back from the actual NFL draft and then the subsequent weeks of, hey, he's going to be a wide receiver, the steam he had in some of these rookie drafts, to where we're at today, where this is the fear that like the biggest naysayers and the most pessimistic Travis Hunter drafters last year had, where we could be looking at a 2026 season where he's playing a lot of defense and there's multiple pass catchers who have more targets than Hunter. Is that where are you at on him? Or you're in the pessimist, or are you an optimist at this point?
I'm very pessimistic. I mean, I don't know how you can read everything that's happening and be optimistic. I would love to. I'm going to go back and listen to you and Scott because I'm really fascinated to hear Scott. I'm going to have him on the show soon. I don't really want to spend forever talking about Travis Hunter, but I think it's a good lesson. We didn't know, I was kind of being funny last offseason whenever we were ranking Travis Hunter. At one point, I took him off my rankings, and we'd go down the rank, and people were like, where's Travis Hunter? I'm like, I don't know, because how do you factor in? What is there's no way to know how to value if maybe he might kind of sort of play some defense. Like, what is that? There's no way for me to value that. There's no precedent for that. So I don't know how to evaluate that. I don't know. How can you know? So that variable was such a weird variable to have included. If you just said to me, he's going to play wide receiver, that's all he can do. Well, I can sort of evaluate that. And in doing so, there were some questions there to begin with. He wasn't a slam dunk prospect. He was a good prospect. And in that, I felt like, okay, well, there's some questions. He's playing alongside BTJ now, alongside, and I'm going to say it, Parker Washington is a legit player, and Jacoby Myers, I think, is one of the most underrated football players in the NFL. I think, Joe Kuvatakis on my program mentioned that Trevor Lawrence's resurrection last year can be pinpointed to the moment that Jacoby Myers arrived in Jacksonville, which is true. So Jacoby Myers is great. BTJ, Parker Washington, even if he is playing wide receiver, there's some limited opportunity potentially there for him, even as it is. The news comes out he's playing defense. I mean, this is ugly stuff. So I don't know that you can really get the value you want to get. Like, you asked me, would you trade him for a second? I insta yes, right? Because you're never getting a first. So if you are selling, you have to sell for a second. A 27 second for Travis Hunter right now, I think, is about as good as you can get. I have posited, and you can tell me what you think about this. I already know your answer because you told me a little something about it pre-show. I have posited that you should be taking Travis Hunter, including him in a trade, And instead of and putting him maybe not as a centerpiece, other stuff as the centerpiece, and allowing Travis Hunter to be valued by the opposing manager in his own evaluation, right? He's not going to value him as a 27th third or a third round pick because that's next to nothing. If you add a third to a trade, it doesn't really change the value of the trade, right? You've never done or not done a deal because
it's a calculator scam. It's a dynasty.
It's a calculator scam, right? And so, and yeah, sometimes you're like, I'm on the fence here. Just give me the third and I'll do it. It's almost like, I don't really want to do this. You got to give me some more. And I know you're not going to give me a first or a second. Just give me a couple thirds or something. But if Travis Hunter's in there, he's not that. He sort of subliminally is valued at more than that somehow or another. And so therefore, that's how you can get maybe 2 seconds of value or something like that for Travis Hunter, is to have him included in a trade, which of course, based off your pre-show trade that you told me, you know damn well.
Yeah, so I made a trade, and this is a Triflex FFPC team, and if you're looking to jump into the FFPC streets, if you're a first-time sign up, you can use the code POINTS and get $25 off. Buy a Dynasty Orphan. Yeah, it's a nice little deal for listeners of Dynasty Life. You cannot be a current FFPC subscriber. You got to be a new one, but use the code POINTS, get $25 off. There's some actually very well-priced orphans right now if you're into buying orphans, as I sometimes do.
Get in there, boys.
Yeah, get in there. So this team is sort of a developing team, but I have a lot of bullets on this team. I just have sort of a lack of balance on the roster, but I could see myself being a contender this year. I end up moving Travis Hunter and the 112. I also have the 102, so I moved the 112 and Travis Hunter, and I threw in the 312, but I have a bunch of thirds, like you said. So I throw the 312 in there. So it's 112, Travis Hunter, and the 312. And I get back Rashee Rice and Cortland Sutton. So I feel like with that one, it's a
Smash City.
It's Smash City.
Yeah.
But again, that's one where if you're somewhat of a rebuilder and you get the 112 and Travis Hunter, you can sort of squint and say, I can do something with that. But after our rookie draft pick conversation, you're probably going to be in Jax's boat. So I agree with you. I think Travis Hunter is if you're trying to move Hunter, I like your idea of moving him for rookie picks, but I think that the better move is 2-for-1s. Use him as an add-on piece to get a major deal done. He has youth on his side, could potentially open you up to taking on a player that's a little bit older than him, that has way more stability, a way more usable asset. But I think he's a very interesting player. We talk about this, and I don't want to get too off subject here, but are there any players heading into year 2 besides Travis Hunter that you think could be a little bit overrated in the Dynasty community right now? And I'll just bring up last year, we weren't like pounding the table saying you must sell all these players. But last year we brought up the idea that maybe Brian Thomas Jr., Nico
That was
Collins,
my number one sell. That was my number one sell. Yeah. BTJ was my number one sell last year. I said on this program,
on this show, you have receipts for it. This is not you're not coming out and saying, by the way, no, you actually said it. But your argument was not that he's going to, it was a great argument. Basically, your argument was it's an artificial gravitational pull where BTJ and sort of the Nico Collins types were getting pulled into the CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors sphere. And maybe that wasn't necessarily warranted, so therefore sort of a sell. I think that's a great way of That's a great way of identifying dynasty sells. It's the guys that are being treated as truly elite, generational, maybe I could roll it into multiple first down the line type guys, when really they're a little bit behind those guys in terms of value, and therefore you need to cash out. Are there any guys heading into year 2 right now that sort of check off that box for you this early on in the offseason?
I mean, maybe Luther Burden if he's steamy enough. I think there's some Luther Burden. There's pockets where Luther Burden didn't have quite the season that BTJ had, so he isn't at the heights that he's at either, right? And I think you could argue it's a Mecca Ibuka, but he also sort of flamed out toward the end of the season. So I'm not so sure there is one. I mean, I'm certainly not selling Jaden Higgins I suppose you could sell Matthew Golden if you want, but there's no value there either. So I don't know that there is a helium balloon like there was in BTJ. BTJ, kind of got there in a way that was like, touchdowns and big plays and things that I was like, wow, he's either like Randy Moss, or if not, you better sell now, right? Because he was being priced that's kind of who he was going to be. I don't necessarily see that. I mean, I think Tedero McMillan's fine wherever. I'm not looking at like keep trade cut right now, but I would certainly have him as a back end wide receiver one. I don't know. Yeah, I'm okay with Tet being there. I'm okay with Emeka being high end wide receiver two, and I think Burden, I would have to go see exactly where he's at. There may be some. I think Burden is the answer, even though I'm pro Luther Burden. There may be some spots where he is overvalued.
Yeah, and Luther Burden's a player that I'm sure is going to come up in our conversation. Is the 101 surefire Jeremiah Love, or are there scenarios where Love lands in a not so awesome place and Fernando Mendoza becomes your 101? For me, I'm keeping Love at the 101. I'm not really worried about the landing spot. I think he's legit. I think he's a big-time asset. He's sort of locked in for me. Are you there?
Yeah, I haven't really considered. Look, here's the other thing, too. Unless you're drafting tomorrow,
yeah,
that's not a question I need to stress about too much. Because if I'm sitting on the 101, I'm just basically worried about whether or not that value can go up or down. I'm not thinking it can really. I think you're right. Jeremiah Love is going to be a first round pick. Period. Going to be a first round pick. And there's Daniel Jeremiah. I think it was him, if I'm not mistaken. Did his first one. He had him like at 8 or some shit. Like, so there's some buzz with him going in the top 10. Obviously, at that point, you're talking about Bijan, Jameer, Genty, type of spot. I think that's about where I put him, probably behind those three in Dynasty. You asked. I don't think I'd hate to take Fernando Mendoza with the 101. That's why I'm a little bit skeptical with this class. Like Fernando Mendoza, just take that profile and put it up against the Caleb, Drake May, Jalen, Jaden, easy for me to say, Jaden and Nix. Is he ahead of Nix? Probably, but it's like he's more in there than he is ahead of those other guys, Jaden Daniels and the crew there. So I think he's probably, again, a little bit more of a mid first round pick in many other classes. He's going to go 101 in the NFL. I don't think he does that in a lot of classes either, right? So, would he have gone 101 in that draft class ahead of May and Daniels and Caleb? I don't think so. No. So again, right? So he's gonna be the 101. He may be great. He could end up being Tom frickin' Brady. I'm not taking anything away from him as a potential prospect, but in terms of his right now value, I'd hate to take him 101. So yes, Jeremiah Love, pretty much the locked and loaded 101 in all formats. And did you already ask me the question about where I have him? And
no, I mean, you sure go ahead and if you have him ranked, whatever you want to share. And
I think he's a second round startup pick in Superflex, probably a late first in non-Superflex, right? I mean, I'm not looking at non-Superflex. I mean, there's 6 to 9, 10 quarterbacks I'd take ahead of him, somewhere in there, right? There's 3 running backs. There's 6 wide receivers ish. You know what I mean? So I think, you start looking at Justin Jefferson or the 101.
I'm 101.
What do you think?
I'll take the 101.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm at the
Me
101
too,
for
but
him, yeah. But it gets
right?
the conversation.
So Jefferson, that's pretty
started,
interesting, right? That wasn't there last offseason, was it now?
No, that's a very interesting one. And sort of the distressed asset of Jefferson, and we have the lack of quarterback clarity, and Jefferson's just the man. That's a great conversation. I think that I'm going Jeremiah Love over Jefferson. I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments saying, Theo, that's absolutely moronic. But that's sort of where I value Love.
By the way, that was where I started to get like, So there's a couple of, if you're going to ask the question, like, because for me, Malik Neighbors, for sure. Jahmyr Gibbs, for sure. Bijan Robinson, for sure, right? So it's like, there's all these players. And then you start getting into I think Amon-Ra. Yeah, give me Amon-Ra, right? But then you start getting like Omarion Hampton or Jeremiah Love. Omarion's set up to smash next year.
Yeah, and Omarion Hampton's sort of a conversation where I think that the 102 becomes in play, especially for teams that don't need Mendoza. But specifically at the one for Love, I think the way that you're describing it is, if you want to use Dynasty rankings, and hopefully you're using my rankings over at Fantasy Points, but if you're there's several other places you can get great Dynasty rankings. he's a top 24 asset is what you're saying.
For sure.
And I agree with you on that one. The steam is not where Ashton Genty was heading into his rookie season.
Right.
But I think the steam is comparable to where Jahmyr Gibbs was heading into his rookie season. I think that's about where the level of steam is. And I do agree with you. Jeremiah Love, I think, could be in play, and I think he could go ahead of where Genty went, just based on the lack of quarterbacks and sort of just how wide open this class is. And I think if he starts free falling, there's going to be a life preserver around pick 15 because somebody's going to move into that range. He starts falling into the range where like a Minnesota can move up a few picks and get him.
Yeah.
No question. So
Minnesota would love that. Right.
Now we're at the 102. Okay, so we've established Jeremiah Love's relative value. Now we're at the 102. If, let's say, two of these wide receivers land really, really well into auto wide receiver 1 on their team category, are you moving them ahead of Mendoza potentially? How clear is the 102 for you at this point? And we're eons away from the NFL draft.
Not clear for me. As a matter of fact, I've had it. Those next 3 wide receivers, then Mendoza. Mendoza's been my 105, but that's a loosely held take because I'm not exactly sure. Now there's some things that are happening that are moving Mendoza up for me. Certainly the coach landing there is very, very strong. I think there's that, to me, that should equate to more offensive success, right? I just think that now we're going to see a little bit more more of a plan of attack in Las Vegas next year. And I think this kid is an absolute sponge. So that's good. Obviously he's got good weapons. He's going to go first overall, all those things. He just did really well in the postseason. All those things are great. But I'm really I'm curious to see who is our wide receiver 1 in the model, whether it's Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon. I don't think it'll be Jordan Tyson based off of what I know of what the model looks for. I'm just sort of, trying to prognosticate. The guy who built the damn thing thinks it's going to be Carnell Tate, and I disagree with him, which is a real, I'm out on a ledge saying it's going to be Mekhi Lemon.
The mathematical model.
The architect. Yes, basically. Yes, I'm an idiot. But who knows? I mean, obviously, we don't. That's the beauty of it, is we don't actually know until we sort of run it through. So we're pretty excited about that. And then, of course, draft capital does have an effect. But on those guys, it won't have an effect, actually, because you really only – one of the things that happens in our model, I'll just say this so people can – it's actually a regressive in terms of draft picks. In other words, you can't get higher in the model. You can only lose points by losing draft capital. So it's kind of a little bit different. Most models will award points for being drafted high. Ours, you are here, you can only fall from there, which is an interesting way of looking at it in terms of overdrafted players become – they don't get any bonus points for being overdrafted.
Okay, I'll throw out a scenario. So we have a lack of clarity at the 102. I'm probably with you where I want it to be a wide receiver at the 102 because Mendoza, I completely agree. I think Mendoza can be I see some of these gloom and doom takes on Mendoza on X. Ex NFL draft scout hates this guy, says it's a terrible pick. I think Mendoza can be a upper half of the NFL starter. So for Superflex, he's got a lot of value. Does he have the ability to be a true game changer for your dynasty roster? I don't know. I think he's going to be a helpful player to have. But I think some of these wide receivers, like you mentioned, have a chance to really, really do it. I think it's Carnell Tate. Right now, Carnell Tate for me, wide receiver 1 in the class. I think he's going to be
great.
And he's going to be the first wide receiver off the board too. But
Probably,
I like Mekhi Lemon a lot. I like Jordan Tyson a lot. You got to talk to Brett Whitefield about Mekhi Lemon when he's on your show. I'll say that's going to some interesting takes there. Shout out to our guy Brett. But like the 102, now we're talking about players you would trade the 102 for, and I think this is a little bit more eye of the beholder type than the 101, where Jeremiah Love is so clear. You brought up Malik Neighbors. I actually think right now is the time to float the 102 and maybe a little something at the Malik Neighbors manager. And I'll tell you why. There's the lack of clarity on the offensive coordinator in New York. And it just feels like the market for Neighbors is cheaper than it should be at this point.
Sure.
Not with us. But I'm floating that 102 at Malik Neighbors. I'll throw it out there to you. Jackson Dart or the 102?
Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart for me as well. But does Jackson Dart's manager agree on that one? Because we talked about the Brian Thomas corollary, and we've seen this many, many times where you have the sample size of production, the guy steams way up. Could the Jackson Dart manager feel like this is the ultimate cash out? I am moving what I paid the 201 for last year to get the 102 this year. I think that trade's in play. Are there any other players that jump out at you as 102 type trade targets for you?
When I look at Mendoza, he's in the CJ Stroud to Cam Ward range. But when I look at like those wide receivers, Lemon, Tate, Tyson, I kind of put them at the high end to the Emeka Ibuka Tet value, and the low end maybe in the Flowers, Addison, Dunze, but you're never going to be able to buy for those prices, and you would never sell for those prices. So ultimately you have to look on the ceiling side. And I would say, yeah, if you can flip any of those sort of, Ibuka or, Tet, I think that's maybe fair. Although, dude, Carnell Tate and Lemon are both excellent prospects right now. And I think they're as close to, not can't miss is not the right words, but they're going to be high end first round draft picks, and their profiles are really spotless. I mean, Tate, has a little bit of a checkered, profile in terms of some raw metrics because he played with such elite talent around him. But on his per route run stuff, he is still really, really good. And of course, all the film guys are recognizing just how great he is. So I think he's also as close to can't miss as possible. I mean, dude, if you get Malik Neighbors type of player, Amon-Ra, any of those types of players, I mean, yeah, go right ahead. I have not thought about this 102 selling it because I've been falling in love with Mekhi Lemon, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Mekhi Lemon's interesting because there's a chance that he's the third wide receiver drafted among these three if Jordan Tyson gets the clean bill of health. And you can, and like, we're not doctors here, but Jordan Tyson has had a number of injuries. The good thing about it is they're not repeat injuries; they're multiple different injuries. But NFL teams are going to weigh that in with the physicals. I think Lemon could get drafted third, but when
I think so.
And just to take a bird's eye view of Lemon, it's sort of the Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigba type stuff you can do with Lemon. So there's like if NFL teams are chasing that, I think somebody could really fall in love with him. He gets top 15 draft capital with that sort of production. Really, really fun stuff. But let's keep this going. We talk about the 102. Get down to 103. 103 is a little bit different, and people say, Theo, 103 and 102 are the same. They're not quite the same, because if I have the 102 on the board, I know I've got that quarterback and that number one pick insulation in my back pocket. Third overall, I have the potential that I could take the quarterback or the top wide receiver. Any players that sort of jump out at you as 103 values? I'll throw out, you mentioned Omarion Hampton. I think like that's shooting for the stars here. But I think that it gets the conversation started because Omarion Hampton had a strong sample size of production, but it didn't play that many games. And so the raw stats, it's sort of still it's still a theoretical what can he do in the full season with Hampton that maybe I haven't had with some of these guys heading into year 2 or year 3 younger running backs. I think that's sort of the level of player that I'm looking to go and get at the 103. Your thoughts on doing something like that?
Yeah, I think dude, I'd take Omarion Hampton at the 103, obviously, here. I think he's the locked-in 102 in this draft, so for sure 103. As I look down, like, just, you still want to stay elite, because if you're giving up a Lemon, Tate, Tyson type of player, so anything in the top 5 I actually kind of view as similar, and I think you still have to stay elite, so that's staying like north of the Ibuka James Cook line, like a mid 3rd round pick, in a super flex draft or somewhere in there. You got to stay in that spot. I mean, Breece Hall is one of those guys that I think you could probably actually get that plus. I'm not really doing that because I don't like to trade, wide receivers for running backs, but you could probably actually get Breece Hall for even a later first round pick potentially. Brees is definitely a target of mine. I think he's going to land, and once he lands, his value is going to shoot up. And I think he's in for a big season this year. So, provided he stays healthy. So that, but Chris Olave, these are the types of players that people are not going to see as quite as valuable as that. I mean, Olave is getting a little older. Look, Tet, but I don't want to get down into the, T. Higgins, Rome Odunze, Jalen Waddle. I don't want to get down in there and start trading early first round picks for those types of players. I want to stay up at the top.
Yeah, I think it's the elite player. You need, if you're going to move basically the 102 to the 105 with this class in Superflex, I've got to come away with an elite player, potentially a running back, a wide receiver. I think that's perfectly fine this year. Any quarterback targets for you in that 102 to 105 range from a trade perspective?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you mentioned one, Dart. Nix, I think, is great. I mean, if you get a little further down than that, you start to get a little bit sketchy in terms of, like I'm not paying that for Trevor Lawrence or something like that, I mean, it's very scary. Trevor was almost worth nothing here for a minute, and then all of a sudden he bounces all the way back. But I think you got to stay in the Justin Herbert or north to sort of really feel good about it. I don't know about Jordan Love, Purdy, Lawrence sort of tier. I would not be trading those picks for those players. But, anything north of that. I mean, Jalen Hurts is actually an interesting one because he's a potential league winner. Although, do you think they're going to outlaw the tush push this offseason and then, maybe Hurts lose a little bit of his rushing value next year?
I really hope not. I think that the tush push it's such a great conversation piece for us. But I think Jalen Hurts, like where he's ranked on Keep Trade Cut is absurd right now. He's been a consistent scorer. But, yeah, if there's tush push fear in the marketplace, I think Hurts is a great target for you to get here.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about some of those quarterbacks you mentioned, and then you mentioned Jalen Hurts, there's such a different level of like actual scoring over the last couple of years between him. Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. Lawrence had this fantastic year last year, really a lot of backloaded scoring, and we feel very good about his team situation, his head coach, his offensive coordinators returning. Are you quite there in trying to push him a little bit higher, or are you sort of like even on Trevor Lawrence, just where you're mentioning him?
It's so hard because I've been a Trevor Lawrence believer for it feels like 5, 6, 7 years and been hurt so badly. And then all of a sudden by the time I pull the cord mid-season last year, of course he takes off. So I'm going to keep saying I'm against him and then he'll keep doing great. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I see him, now as he's the quarterback 11 on Keep Trade Cut, which is amazing because everybody was just selling him for nothing and, pulling the ripcord, early in the season. And now he's back up there. So that shows you how fickle, dynasty marketplace can be based off of, performance. So, you got to make your bets sometimes. That's where my bet is with Breece Hall. I don't want to overpay for Breece because I understand where his value is, but I think you want to make bets like that of players that you think can be, who are undervalued, right? And so I'm okay doing that. And that's why I mentioned Olave a little bit too. I think Olave was so good, dude.
Olave was fantastic.
And right. And so there's certain production that you get, like Jacoby Myers and Cortland Sutton have been, I've been fans of those players because nobody likes them, but yet they put up wide receiver 2 numbers every single year. You're like, why? That's great. Yeah, I love wide receiver 2s, and especially if I don't have to pay anything for them. So, I mean, I'm looking for, inadequacies in the market there. And I think maybe that's where Bo Nix is right now, the injury. He's, quarterback 12 on Keep Trade Cut. But after that top 12, like I said, I think it gets a little bit dicey. You want to be careful trading early for late first, though. Hey, we're going to get there. That's where you can start trading for those, the other quarterbacks that are in the quarterback 2 range.
So the 106 is the one. Now we're sort of out of the elite picks in Superflex. Let's talk about the 106. I'll throw out a couple of players here.
Yeah.
Chris Olave, you mentioned, I think is a great target for the 106. How about James Cook?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I don't know if I mentioned James Cook. I think James Cook, I mean, obviously with the new OC there, should see a lot of. I think you tweeted it.
Yeah, I'm all about this argument that there's unknown receiving upside for him in the Sean Payton, like the Pete Carmichael. If they really do want to have some influences of the Sean Payton offenses in Buffalo, which seems to like the hire makes sense. Joe Brady also, like, with the history with him and Carmichael. I think that James Cook, how do you get more out of a guy that's been so efficient as a touchdown scorer, so efficient as a runner? Get him out in space with the ball in his hands. James Cook looks terrific as a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, if only they could get rid of that GM, you know what I mean?
Well, that guy's going to be the mayor of Buffalo by the time we're done recording.
Holy smokes. He's like he's like the Epstein files. He must be holding someone on someone. He's got some dirt.
The owner too.
Yeah.
The owner's oh my gosh. Got to keep the guy
just
quiet.
Came out, and I mean, I think he had his schwanz in his hand under the table. I mean, those guys are tight, man. Those are tight dudes right there.
Very weird stuff. But James Cook, I think,
very loyal.
106, Chris Olave, James Cook, those guys that you mention as
hell yeah,
they're big time elite scorers, and they're not kind of priced into like elite assets at this point. I'll throw out Nico Collins. Are you on Nico Collins as this sort of point?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Nico, sure. Yeah, I mean, you're getting elite production. Absolutely. Look, anything that look, Garrett Wilson, how about that?
Yes.
That's one. I mean, boy, oh boy, I don't know what's going to happen with him at the quarterback position, but it could be even, Malik Willis, which I don't know that's so bad.
I'm fine with that.
Malik Willis is another buy of mine. So, yeah.
Yeah, Malik Willis with Garrett Wilson. I think we could paint ourselves a picture that Garrett Wilson does well there. But yeah, I think that's sort of the range of player that you're looking at. And I think that the allure of the 106, where there's going to be some smart people out there saying, I'm going to get you guys. You want this Garrett Wilson? Well, guess what? I'm going to end up with RB2 in this class, but RB2 in this class might be Jadarian Price at pick 40, and he skyrockets in value. Or Denzel Boston, who, guess what? Mekhi Lemon goes 15 overall, and somebody trades up and drafts Denzel Boston, makes them their wide receiver 1 instantly. Like, there's scenarios where you could lose this trade potentially. I do think 106 interesting. Talk about some of our late first rounders. And I'll say, you mentioned Breece Hall. This is like that eye of the beholder thing where you're willing to trade a little bit earlier than Breece Hall. And this is where rookie draft pick trade timing comes into play. I think after NFL free agency, which is March 9th, early tampering, free agency the 11th, after that, the Breece Hall window closes.
It's too late.
It's too late.
Yep, it's too late.
So I'm
because I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a couple of spots where he could land where you're like, oh my god, this is awful, right? There's a couple of, but I don't know, man. I mean, you talk about Cowboys, Chiefs, and all these spots where you're like, oh my god,
or
this
even,
would be like
even some of the places where it's not necessarily the truly elite offense, but you could say, oh well, this is a much better scenario than he's ever had. I'll throw one out there to you. Tennessee Titans say we're going to pay Breece Hall the bag, and he's going to replace Tony Pollard, and we're going to move off of Pollard, and we sort of re-roll what we did with Pollard. You get him in that situation where he's next to Cam Ward. We've got Brian Dable there. We're like, okay, I can kind of see it happening where Breece Hall all of a sudden steams up a little bit in ADP and then the Dynasty Marketplace. Like, it's just sort of resetting the clock and getting him out of the wasteland of New York. If he's franchise tagged in New York, how are you treating him?
I don't like it, but I mean, it depends on who they get for a quarterback. I mean, we just talked about Malik Willis. I mean, if they get Malik Willis, Garrett Wilson, I think Breece Hall become, buys yet again. I mean, look, if they do franchise him, I guess that means that, their coaching situation. I mean, when's that going to end too? I mean, they that's a really bad spot. So yeah, I don't like anything about New York, but I think it's going to change sooner rather than later, but it may be a whole year before it fixes itself. So yeah, maybe that's the only thing with even Garrett Wilson, and whatever happens in New York is just going to be, I think, a bit dysfunctional. My God, please don't do that to me.
Little later first round pick. I'll throw out the name Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, I'm kicking and the whole Declan Doyle hired. The passing volume could be the best it's ever been for Zay Flowers, just based on the history of the Ben Johnson offense. Even when Ben Johnson offenses are super run heavy, and I know Lamar Jackson's sort of his own thing, but the rushing production pulled back a little bit for Lamar last year, significantly actually. Maybe Zay Flowers has his sort of career year. He's sort of like a year ago he's more valuable in Dynasty than Chris Olave. That flip-flopped. You could see Flowers, I think, have his big year. Any other players sort of like that for you? I mean, there's so many guys out here we could have this
Hey,
conversation. T. Higgins.
Theo, by the way, I need to circle back. Why did you do that to me? Why did you hurt me so badly when you said, what if Brees Hall stays in New York when there's Houston Texans, there's Washington Commanders, there's Dallas, there's Chiefs, there was another one too. What was the other one I was thinking of? Oh God, Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's just places where it's like, there we go. And you had to do Tennessee and the Jets. Why do you do this to me? Come on now.
I'm throwing out the kind of the gross ones just to show the interest level.
My
but
God.
yeah, Brees Hall.
You saw me stuttering and stammering. I was like, "What? Why do we have to do this to me? Come on!"
I predicted.
I was trying to find a way to say
I predicted
good things.
Houston a while ago. There's plenty of bailout opportunities for Brees Hall though. Like the Chicago could cut DeAndre Swift, save a bunch of money, sign Brees Hall, get younger.
Sure.
I mean, he's in a Ben Johnson offense. We'd get pretty excited about that one.
Yeah.
End of the first round, I'm throwing out names like Zay Flowers. Any other names you want to throw out for end of the first round? I'll throw out, are there any sort of veterans you're circling? I'll say Chase Brown's interesting if you're a true contender. How about some of the older players? I'll throw out the two older Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley. Can you squeeze one of these guys out on a contender?
Yeah, I mean Ken Walker. I mean, you could probably talk me into a lot of these players. And what I would try to do is, even if I'm going down, like, what about Gadsden, right? What about Pitts? There's just a lot of players that you could talk me into. RJ Harvey, and I would be okay with almost any of them there in that late first. And if you're doing something like, let's say you're going after a Jaden Higgins type with one of your late firsts, you can probably get plus on top of it, right? I'm selling you, this late first. I'm getting Jaden Higgins. Who knows what you can get on top of that? Maybe you add a couple of picks to Jaden Higgins and get a 28 first or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways where you can kind of really, really play the values and make a bet on someone. Blake Corum, I'm not saying he's worth alone the 107, right? I'm just saying where you can maybe win the bet twice. So yeah, there's ways where you can play this thing. I mean, obviously, if you can get higher than that, where you're talking, getting some real production, the AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, is it time to sort of make a rebet on Rome Odunze at that value, given the fact that we're likely to see DJ Moore out of town? It's probably going to be the three-headed monster, Loveland, Odunze, and Burden, which is going to be super exciting and probably very efficient or prolific, I should say, in 2026.
We could go on all day long. I think that there's some really interesting ideas and names that we've talked about with some of these picks. To end the show here, let us know a couple of players that you're floating second round picks for. Second rounders, obviously, even more lack of clarity, and you don't have the prop up where you necessarily have the value that like the 201, 202, 203 sometimes hold in this class.
Yeah, I think we talked about them. I mean, some of them you don't even have to pay that much. And again, especially when they're on the clock. I mean, I can tell you that, selling seconds right now, I would not necessarily be doing because they're not as valuable. People aren't as excited. I'm telling you, when you get a second on the clock, there's someone who fell. There's someone who fell, and you don't know who it is. And you don't even know if you like them. But somebody in your league is going to be like, dude, love that dude. Oh, my God, I can't believe he's there. And they're going to pay sometimes a future first-round pick. You could probably get a 2028 first-round pick for an early 2026 second this year when it doesn't seem rational that that's possible. I'm telling you, it's not probably going to be a 27 first that you can get straight up, but you can probably get a 28 first for that pick. So there's probably I would say that I'm selling those the 2026 seconds for all the same people you mentioned in the late first, because I kind of view those late first as seconds anyway. So I'm going to hold them unless I'm getting something I really like. I'm not going to sell light and just get some sort of also ran, even though I think that's probably what they're worth. I think they're going to increase in value as we get closer to the draft, and you'll be able to get more than you dreamed of. So hang on to them and don't do anything silly. But if you can get up, if you can trade a second and get some of the guys that we've already mentioned, then go for it. But other than that, sit down and relax and let them accrue value.
And go ahead and try to trade for some of those 2027 second round picks because
Yes, sir.
the 2027 seconds, the steam is not there like the first, but eventually it'll get there if this class is as good as we think it's going to be.
It's going to be great.
Let everybody know once again where they can
But
find.
by the way, I think Trinidad Chambliss
Oh,
would be the potential 106 in this draft if he comes out. I mean, he's a very high variance prospect, but the high side is like really exciting, right? Really, really exciting. I mean, he's got the legs that can probably get him to like Bo Nix, Drake May sort of rushing. Nothing. He's not Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields type, but he also can sling it, man. He was a really, really good player. Obviously, I think everybody saw that on the biggest stage. We saw it all season, and we're kind of like, wow, this is incredible. What a story. But he went from a story to a prospect, and I think he's definitely worth considering at the 106 if he comes out. I guess we're going to find out about that in about a week or two.
Yeah, we're going to have to get back together and talk about these rookies a little bit more over the next couple of weeks and months. Let everybody know once again where they can find your work.
Yeah, I mean, at Dino Game Theory, we're going to link everything, but OTC Fantasy on Twitter, and that's where everything's kind of popping off from. So just hop on there. There is a website. It's OTC Fantasy Football, but it's not done yet. It's not ready. So there's a little bit of stuff there, but it's not ready to go. So all the tools are coming. They're going to be released this spring. March is what we're hoping for. So all the cool stuff is coming. I mean, I'm not a magic man. I can't do all this all at once. So it's coming. But yeah, hit us up at OTC Fantasy on Twitter and of course Dino Game Theory.
Yeah, highly recommend all of Scott's work. Make sure you stick with us at Dynasty Life. More shows like this all off season long that are going to help you crush your Dynasty leagues in 2026 and beyond. We'll see you soon.